Hey, what's going on, everybody? Figured I'd do a quick video. It's pretty busy today and didn't bother doing anything like that. Well, that's a fascinating way of doing something. So let me see if I can show you what I found on this particular car. Now, we want to do just a repaint. And the paint down the side of the car is pretty flawless. And there's the odd dirt nib or something in it. But it held up well for 20 years and it's shiny. But it almost seemed that even outside in the light, the hood, the trunk, and the roof, top of the fenders didn't look the same as the rest of the car. I'm going to try to get close. You can see, and it's hard. If I move it in quick, I can probably focus. It goes out of focus. But you can see all the little specks and dots. Yeah, so my finger's just there for the focus. But you see as I move with that light, there you go. They're across the whole. See those? So those are pinholes. You can't see it when it's sitting outside in the sun unless you walk way up on it. And you can rub it. You can barely feel it. And it looks like solvent pop. My guess is, there's a couple theories to that, what causes that, and usually it happens right after you paint a car. One theory is that you're putting it on too fast, too quick, too whatever, and as it skins, the reducers and solvents underneath try to come through and they pop through, which I could kind of see. But I've had it happen with very little product, doing a touch up on like a roof and stuff like that, or above a windshield of a Toyota one time. And we had to clear coat from the windshield back to the sunroof, which was only about 16 or 12 inches or somewhere in between. But we blended it in and then we clear coated so far where we could kind of hide it. Now, I didn't do that in the booth. I did that where the truck was just sitting in the shop. Another theory to solvent pop is that as it's kicking, doing whatever it does, and the solvents are coming off of the paint, your fan in the booth pulls it all away, and if it doesn't, some of the solvent goes up, gets heavy, comes back down, lands on the car, creates tiny little craters that look like pinholes. I'm starting to think that that makes more sense. And you know what, maybe a little both of those theories is true. And I mean, if you go to body shop school now, maybe they have other theories. But let's go with those two. Those are the two that I know. I mean, you can see it across the... But anyway, so the reason I was looking at that, there wasn't so much of that on the trunk that I noticed right away. But what was on the trunk, yeah, see even this tail panel? It's not too bad there, but it's really bad there, kind of goes away, and there, it almost looks like the paint was thick enough to absorb it. But then there's a lot of dirt in the paint over there. But as you come this way, you have solvent pop as well, for whatever reason. And some guys say that if you turn the booth off too early, that'll happen, because whatever's hanging in the air falls down. And I mean, if it's real minor, you get lucky, you wet sand, you buff it, and it kind of goes away. And because of the shine on this particular roof, you almost wonder if that's what happened. But it's hard to say. This is an old paint job. But what we do know, on the trunk, there wasn't just solvent pop. There was little, I'm going to call them blisters. And I mean, when you look at them, they're barely up off of the car. There's none on the fenders or anything. It was literally just on the trunk. There's none over here. But there's these little blisters, and I seen that on these newer Chevys where the paint on the rockers comes off. It seems to be on white, some of the silvers, the lighter colors. Those little dots are all them little, well, some were solvent pop marks. Some of the big ones, like down in here, was right below the blisters, and I kind of watched like that shape, and up here there was some shapes. But anyway, I kind of took note, and what I did is I took a razor blade, and I was able to just skin this off. And I mean, it took a matter of minutes. It didn't take like hours scraping it away. I stripped this whole trunk off in about 10 minutes, and that's while trying to pay attention to what was going on. And the funny thing is, it came off real easy, except for right here. But I mean, it came off real easy. So I got one little mark from the razor blade, and then over there's a little ding where I slipped. But everything else is like, you could almost clean it and paint over it. We're not going to do that. I'm just saying it's like glass smooth. You come down to the edge where it starts to go down. That paint down there, the reason I kind of lazied out and didn't finish it, it's stuck on like a bugger. It don't want to come off. Good to know. Sides of the car, a few other places, I kind of picked around the edges, and the paint don't want to come off. But on the trunk lid, just shaved it off like nothing. And you can see the solvent pop here. Well, you probably can't, but there it is. See it in the light? And then we come down and it goes away. So as soon as we're on this plane, it's good. The rest of the car, I think we can sand and paint, and it's going to be totally fine. Even these fenders, as soon as I started coming right up to this lip where it was round, I guess the paint had to settle or whatever it does on the crown. The last little bit was hard to chip off. And I mean, I just stopped there because we're going to sand that off gently, and then sand that up in, and then we're going to put epoxy primer over that to blend this to the epoxy primer. So I did both fender tops. We're also going to do the roof, unless of course the roof is really hard on there, and it could be. Different things happen. Because when I went to pick away at the roof a little bit, there was a stone chip back here. So I took the blade and tried to get under it. Couldn't do it. So you might take some 80, sand the living hell out of that. Now, there was no blisters anywhere else on the car. That was something that only happened on the trunk lid. Could have been a bad primer, could have been anything, could have been they didn't prep it right. It was likely all painted in pieces, so it's hard to say. So the roof is okay, but we're going to probably sand that with 80 grit and coat that in epoxy primer, and we'll come down halfway down. The sail panels will blend that out. The trunk lid, we're just going to epoxy the whole thing. I mean, that's all got to be sanded yet anyways. But the sides are basically, it's going to be a repaint. I'd like to restore the car because it's so nice. It'd be worth doing. But the owner doesn't want to do that. The budget's a repaint, and it is what it is. And it's not a perfect car. It's a daily driver. So let's go with that. So that's where we're at the Firebird. Took one of them chromes off around the wheels, one of them trim pieces. The other three got to go. The screws are terrible. I might just end up drilling all the heads off. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to have to jack it up to get the back one off, and I didn't want to mess with it anymore. So I went ahead and in between waiting for other things to dry, scraped this fender off, then I did that one. And again, one side took like 2-3 minutes. Same with this side, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I basically went and started my barbecue, threw a couple steaks on, came down, scraped this one, went over, flipped them, scraped that one, flipped them again. And I played around at the roof back there. I went and ate some steak for supper. So that was nice. But yeah, so you know what that's like, barbecuing a steak, right? We're talking 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you flip it, and the same on the other side. You know, I'm winging it. I didn't time it, but it don't take long to cook a steak on the barbecue. So it didn't take long to do that. So now we can sand it out and do what we're going to do. But it's so strange that everywhere else, like I say, the paint is adhered so well. We're replacing the hood, so I'm not even going to worry about the hood. Trunk lid we got to worry about, top of the fenders, and the roof, like I say, we'll just sand that down. And I think we'll be golden. And the bigger update, this is what I was working on today in between just sort of messing with the Firebird. The Firebird, I actually did a lot of it yesterday. The scraping today, stripping all the stuff off, like it's got no bumper, no grill. I'm kind of all over the place today. Long week, it's Friday. Give me a break. So this guy here had some things where there was repairs as such. Down there, fender tops. This has all been stripped and cleaned, filled. The filler goes way past where we need it to be. It was a little bit low. We brought it up a little bit, you know, so it'll kind of match the hood a little bit better. There's a little bit too much on this edge. We're going to go about this high. So here there's too much, but that's okay. We'll sand that off. We're still going to be, the nice thing, some of the metal was a little funny here, but I banged it around with the body hammers a little bit. I take one of these 2-footer, you know, and you can keep checking it as you're going and find your lows and highs. And basically, like, because if you just try to put a whole bunch on, it's like a big mess. So you put on layers and so on. And so that, I'll probably use the machine board file, air file, I guess you call it. We'll fix that up. Haven't done those yet. Now another thing with these is you got to come in and you can see that little bit of pitting. A guy could sandblast that, or you can rust treat it. There's a few different things you can do with that. I'm going to spot blast that. It's literally the only pitting on the car is there. I think the other one, yeah, right up in here a little bit. Anywhere else, it would grind away. None of the metal underneath the failing filler. Now this filler wasn't falling off this car. What was happening is you were getting all little crackles in the paint. You could tell they were kind of deep. And basically wherever the brass from bronze welding was, it basically an inch on each side of that was coming undone slowly. And there was this green stuff in there. So whether it be corrosion or flux from when they welded it, they might have just put filler right over. It's hard to say, right? This was done pre-1974 when the owner of this car bought this car. He bought this car when he was 14 years old in 74. And a lot of this bodywork he didn't know was underneath. But he knew it had been done. He knew there was a quarter replaced back here. He had no idea about the fenders. But I mean 1974. So that's, 49 years ago? Same with the top of this fender. Now the other one, it came down like so, the patch. This one didn't. It was just way up in here. But I way overfilled it and brought it way out. Same idea. Yeah, I made a bit of a mess there. We'll clean that up too. But you want to get enough on that you don't have all these little divots. You're going to have some, but you just want a little bit. So after this is nice and smooth where you want it to be, we can use a little bit of filler to do the pinholes and stuff. And then that'll be ready to epoxy prime. Fenders are good otherwise on this car. Gonna just probably epoxy the whole thing. We'll see how it goes. Might not have to, but don't really know the nature of the paint on this car and whatnot. So most of this blue just scuffs right off. Now that's the second layer blue. The first layer blue, when you sand it, you get to like a black primer and then another layer blue, which is this stuff. So we haven't done anything with the door yet, but the door is basically sand her down and redo her. So this is where we had the quarter panel. And all the way around that perimeter, down like so, down like so. That was all rebuilt. That was all welded back together. Now, back here, there was a place where there was a lot of filler that had cracked and was coming off. A sander, just a DA basically, with some 80 grit. Literally sitting right there. Clean that right up. That being said, we took a light acid, washed the whole thing wherever the metal was, and we washed it again to neutralize it. And then we sanded it again after it dried. Which you know, that should take care of it. Now once you have it clean, and the metal's there, I've got a polisher. It's an old 2-speed polisher. And basically I run some rough paper on there. And the 2 speeds is in the trigger, and I just use the low speed. And what I like to do when the metal is showing, let me see if you can catch that. While you do the 80 DA everywhere and people say it's sharp enough, I always feel like it's good if you change the paper a lot. But just to make sure, I take that just to cut up the metal a little bit, make sure it sticks really well. Anytime I peel into an old car where the filler stays on really well, it seems to be the ones that have really crazy scratching in them. So a lot of bite seems to hold. And I've been enjoying working on this car in a sense that it kind of shows you that, you know, the old thinking or whatever you want to call it. I mean, people say, oh, back in the day, like, I get it, in the 80s. And I learned in the, around 91, from guys that did body work in the 80s. And there was a lot of stuff where it was just throw tape on it, fly screen, newspaper, plug it up with filler. And people were mad like 20 years later when they fell apart. But, I mean, I'm still pulling them apart only now in 2023, right? From like 1980 something. They held up a long time. And quite frankly, a lot of those cars wouldn't be around now had they not done what they did back then. Not that they couldn't have done a better job, but the cars aren't worth nothing, right? But this one seems to be done a little better. I guess because, you know, maybe back a little further. Who knows why it was done better. Somebody just cared about the car more. But everything on this car, and you know what, maybe it was the metal. Maybe this 1955 steel is just better than the crap from 1975, you know? So, and I guess that'd be a 20-year gap there too. So I noticed the metal on the 50s cars is really good, even when there's holes in it. It's like you can clean around it, work with it, weld it right beside a hole, like it's solid. And I've noticed, like, I've got a 66 and a 67 car I've worked on, and I've noticed a similar thing. Not quite as heavy, but the metal seems to stay good. But then when you get into the 70s, the metal is just crap. So that could have a lot to do with it. But this car, basically, we're just going to keep stripping it apart piece by piece, and we're just going to put the filler right back to it. Not crazy thick. There was kind of a dent there that they had buried. I pulled it out a little bit, as much as I could without anything weird happening. And we're just going to fill it right back in. That'll be the deepest filler likely on the car that we know of. And I mean, it's nowhere near the 1/4 inch thick. Of course, up here I smeared it on pretty thick because we're going to catch the curve. Not too worried about that. You know, we're going to have to play with that to get all the shapes nice. But I mean, someone did it in the past. We'll do it again. So not a big deal. Gonna have to put more filler down there. I see some highs and lows and whatnot. But before I go too crazy, I might actually just take the air file, blast across it, just to see where the highs and lows are a little better. Clean it off and then fill the lows. And then air file it some more. The primer's nice and that's straight, so we're going to use that as a guide. Most of that red primer will come off. Because it doesn't take much to come off. If you look here, you can see it's really thin. So I like to leave a bit of meat for the air file to chew into, so we won't cut through the red primer on purpose. We're just going to concentrate on the filler, make everything straight and flow. And I mean, obviously the file's going to come here and it's going to scratch it out. But once we get it nice and smooth, we'll probably run right across that and take most of that off as well. It'll just gives it something to chew, right? So it's not just biting in the metal. Like, we'll be able to see if it hits metal right away. It'll show us the high spots and low spots in case we need more, which we likely will. But, you know, we'll remake that whole shape there. We had to fill that all in. And again, it's not real thick. This will be fine. This car's going black, but it's going to be a satin semi-gloss black. Kind of like the black I did on the hood of the 69 Satellite Sport Satellite, whatever, the Plymouth. You can go see my videos on that. That was pretty cool. But in this case, we're going to paint the whole entire car that color. So I'm glad he didn't want to go shiny, because this car is probably not going to be 100% perfect, But in that satin black color, it'll look totally fine. And the cool thing with that particular paint, you can wash it. Still got to fill that in a little bit. But for today, I was just trying to get this on relatively flush. And I use the 2-foot ruler basically as a straight edge and ran it and ran it and ran it. And anywhere that was low, fill it in and smooth it out and so on. Different hardener, hence the different color. Same stuff. I like this particular filler. It doesn't dry real fast. It kind of sucks when you want it to dry fast. However, it gives you lots of work time. So it is what it is. And I'll show you that. Because you say something about filler and people go, well, what filler are you talking about? And you may not have seen my other videos. CarWorks Goldworks, that's what we're using. Now I did give this a terrible review the first day I tried it, but then I gave it a redeeming review after because I realized you do got to put enough filler in it, and or hardener I should say, which is this stuff right here. Comes with it. It's like a pinky red. It almost doesn't color it. So I like to get this stuff, which is the brick red colored stuff. And if you use that, it'll harden a little harder and a little faster. The one that comes with it goes a little slower. They claim it's supposed to be something like Rage. I don't know if that's quite true, but it is pretty good. And I mean, it's probably half the price as Rage Gold in the purple container. So it's pretty good. And it goes on pretty golden if you use that hardener. If you use this hardener, you get that pink color, which looks a lot like that. At least when you put them close together, they're kind of the same. So that's what we're working on now. It'll be fun to do this. Now these ones I didn't fill up yet because, like I say, I got to use the spot blaster and sandblast a few areas. The far quarter on the other side, we did one area down low just because I couldn't get in where it was welded together, so I shot blasted that. It was small. I literally let the sand fall on the floor. This side I still got a strip. Some weirdness going on there, and when you see those dots like that, there's a patch, a dent, something there, but whatever it is, it's failing. That's why you see all those little circles. And you look down here, all them little dots and circles. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all failing, but it probably does. And what it is like back here, there's a little bit back here, and it kind of goes away. There's filler here, which is why. But sometimes when you get all those little circles, it basically indicates that your filler is failing, like it's swollen or going soft. So you gotta peel it off. So this quarter is going to be harder than the other one. The other one we had to go up around a weird perimeter in the bottom, but on this quarter we're basically going to go from about here down. We're going to strip 60% off of the quarter right down to metal, and then at the front there's some filler, and we don't really know why. Like you can tell, like when you look at these, right, you've got metal right there, and this was sanded smooth. No one dug this out, so there's no filler here. But then from here down, that's all been filled in. But you can see a patch that was welded in there, and above that, and I figure that's what they did. You can kind of feel it here. There's nothing, and then all of a sudden it tapers out and goes over a patch. So we're going to blast all that out and see what's there. The other side was pretty good and flush fit. I don't know if this is, but we'll see what happens. If it's not, we might have to cut it and flush it in, or at least refill it. Don't know why up there has filler. It didn't take much to sand into that. Nothing was failing up there, but I mean, no filler. Quite a bit of filler. So up here has filler for whatever reason. So we'll probably take from about here and just, keep going until we get good metal. So if that means we take the filler and we find more, maybe we end up coming back to here somewhere. Like between these two holes, it's hard to say where the filler kind of starts. I figure it kind of goes right here. Yeah, I wrote swollen. As you're sanding, I just like to make notes everywhere as what I've found. But anyway, so that's what we've been working on. And again, it would be great to take this car and, you know, find some brand new fenders, which, like, there's no rot anywhere. So there's really no point of doing that. This is a driver. It's been a driver its whole life. It did have one nice paint job on it and Krager's and nice chrome about 20 years ago. But that being said, the car's been a driver most of its life. And even when it was nice, it was driven. This car was always driven, which is cool. You know, I like cars that you actually drive. And I'm not saying don't build a high end. Go ahead and build it as high end as you want. You know, 55 Pontiac, what's it worth? I have no idea. But we'll clean it up. We'll make it nice. It'll be a good driver. And look, your paint job ain't going to last indefinitely anyway. So no matter how good you do it. I mean, if you really take something down, spend a lot of time and a lot of money, take everything down to metal, cut out all the rot, you're going to have something good that'll last. The paint itself still won't last forever, but I mean, you keep it in a heated garage and under a cover and no humidity and that sort of thing. I mean, it definitely buys you way more time. But yeah, even underneath the filler, there was no rot on this car. Like, whatever panels and patches were put in were clean. Now, this has never been driven in the winter as long as this guy has owned this car. So once they put all this patchwork in, because they likely had rust, and we know this side was hit, but down low was rust, and the patching there was rust. So once they cut the rust out and stopped driving it in the winter, yes, 1974 till now, this car lasted a really long time. And there's no reason it won't last that long again. So we're just going to do exactly what they had done last time. There's no reason that can't work. It was a cool experiment to get this car and gently scrape off all the junk just to see what was there. What a good looking car. But anyway, that's what I'm up to. It's going to be the weekend. Busy weekend. Probably won't post too much. So that'll be it for me till next week. Maybe. We'll see. Cheers.